Morgan Cox, thank you for joining me here on Based. You've achieved the lofty status of being Based because you, I think, kicked up one of the most important national conversations during the election campaign a couple of months ago. I think it was back in March. Actually, you appeared on ABC's great TV show Q&A, and you asked a pretty important question of the government at that time, and it really kicked off the debate about the housing crisis in this country. And so for that, you've achieved Based status. Congratulations! But more importantly, it was, I think, a pretty important thing to do. We've actually we thought we might play the clip for people.
Our next question comes from Morgan Cox. Hi, Morgan.
Hi. I recently got a rent increase notice for an additional $180 a week, which works out to be about 10 grand a year. I tried to find a cheaper place and there just aren't any. What little is available, there's dozens of people lined up. Lots of them are immigrants and they have plenty more money than I can possibly get. I'm already working 2 jobs. One more rent increase, and my family, my 1-year-old baby, we're facing homelessness and we've got nowhere to go. My family's already been forced out of Sydney for the same reasons. I want to know, is the government going to cut immigration to match housing availability, or are we just going to keep going until every regular working Australian is homeless?
Well, I'm so sorry you're going through that, and it's a story we all hear right across the country.
Well, that's really the main one. And as I understand it, the government makes the laws and decides who comes in. So if you've got 2.5 million people coming in a few years, surely you can say to them, no, we don't have enough houses for you.
Matt Keane, you're a former treasurer.
In essence, this was you. You were in the audience of Q&A, and it came upon you to ask this question because things had been getting increasingly tough. But in essence, what was the background to specifically going into Q&A and asking that question? Was it something you'd thought about for a while, or was you just absolutely insistent on raising this issue that way, or had you tried other things before?
No, I'd never been on any kind of show before, but the situation that happened to me is my own family was facing almost a $10,000 rent increase. On top of it, had a pretty rough year with the business, some unexpected costs and things, and that nearly put us on the street. And obviously, that sort of brings things to your attention, especially when you've got a 1-year-old baby that you're trying to keep a roof over his head. So and then I realised how important this is, and I started looking into it, realising how bad it is, not just for me, but for literally millions of other people.
Yeah, and I think that's why it resonated so well, because really it was a sort of a very real, straight from the heart assessment. You'd said, I think, that your rent had gone up $180 a week, which was about 10 grand per annum, which I thought really you're getting nothing out of that other than just simply continuing to live where you do. You made the point in that clip, I think, that you'd already moved from Sydney. You'd sort of moved out of the main sort of central area in order to find lower rents, but that as a result of doing all of that, you just found yourself competing with people, just lots and lots of other people. Tell us a little bit about the backstory to that, because you obviously you've been there for a little while where you are presently now, but that's had to be a moving beast as well, I suppose.
So at the time I said that my family had been forced out of Sydney, I wasn't actually referring to my own, like my children, my partner. I was referring to my sister, my mother, my family, my extended family have been forced out of Sydney. But yes, we had moved because it was cheaper on the Central Coast, and it's not anymore. But yeah, last time it was more of a choice to save money. This time, we're against the wall, so it's become a dire situation.
Has that been the case over the last, probably, I think you're saying 5 years as sort of things have really taken off in terms of the cost. But is places like sort of more regional areas like the Central Coast around Sydney now, are they sort of getting comparable to Sydney rents and costs now generally?
Yeah, depending on where you are, it's almost the same, and some places are higher. Like where the Prime Minister's mansion is, it's totally insane. But there's still a few pockets that are a tiny bit cheaper than the very most western suburbs. But really, where I am in Gosford, it's pretty similar to sort of the mid-range areas in Sydney, I guess, around Parramatta, and it's comparable. And I think that might have a lot to do with the universities and I don't know what you call them. I don't think they're universities, but they're bringing students, and there seems to be a lot of them popping up, just little shop fronts, and they don't seem to actually do any teaching there, but that they'll say that they're some kind of an educational facility, and there's just lots of them popping up. There's lots and lots of students around here.
We've seen a lot of this over the country over the last 3 years. I mean, there's something in the order of 1.5 million people that have come into the country. The natural effect of that is competition for housing. And I think you said in that clip that, when you were going to inspections, even for rental properties, you're seeing more people than you'd ever seen. That's been building over the last few years? Has it spiked recently, or is that something that's just been a slow creep?
I'd say it was a slow creep over sort of 5 years, and then it spiked this last year. It's there's just so many more people you wouldn't believe. Like just the local parks, and there was a few people here and there, and now during the day there's hundreds of people, and there's just no car spaces anywhere in any shopping centre. It's just there's a staggering number of people here, just huge number of people from what was a fairly sort of quiet area. It's just crazy.
It's just exploded. And in terms of your own work, I mean, I think you said you're working a second job in order to just sort of make ends meet now. And so your line of work is what?
I do electronics, home automation. I install electronics in houses, so I'm sort of in the construction industry, and that's why I have a few ideas about what's going on there, and it's I think I used to consider myself reasonably well paid, and but just the expenses, not just the business expenses, but the expenses for everything has gone up exponentially. So yeah.
And of course, from that point of view, the increased number of people that you're competing with for housing, I guess there's another angle to that, which is that that's competing for work as well in one sense. I mean, there will be people that are coming through the doors that are in those lines of business as well. So there's added pressure on that. There's added pressure on the roads, on the infrastructure. I mean, this is the sort of thing that. I suppose probably here in SA we don't see as much of, although we have had, rising numbers of people coming in as well. But really, this is a phenomenon for New South Wales and Victoria and Queensland, I suppose, where we are just seeing competition across every sector, and not necessarily, that's not always a bad thing, except to say in this case when people can't put roofs over their heads or they're priced out of the market in the housing market, this is when you start to see. So, I mean, from your point of view, you made an enormous splash with that. That clip went, probably around the world, I would say, but certainly had millions and millions and millions of views on all the platforms here in Australia. What was the feedback to that? Because what you were basically saying in there was, look, why are we opening the floodgates to people when we don't have enough housing already for Australians as it is? What were you met with after that? I mean, there'd be the predictable cries of, your anti-immigration and all the usual stuff. But from that clip, you heard a lot of support in the background. I imagine you probably have had a fair bit of support as well.
Yeah, the vast majority has been support. I guess that's why, millions and millions of people viewed it and shared it on. And I think that a lot of people must personally experience it, or certainly know someone who's experiencing it. the last stat I know, I think it's a couple of years old now, but I think there was 3 million people in poverty. And that, by the way, there's 7 million renters, so there's something like half the renters are in poverty. So there's got to be a lot of people out there hurting. I think we got 300,000 homeless or something, which is staggering for such a comparatively small population and such a wealthy country. So I think it resonated with a lot of people. But of course, yeah, a few people came out of the woodwork. I've been called racist. There's little Facebook groups that pop up, and even there's a slanderous video out there associating me with people I've never even met and calling me racist. And it's astonishing, considering I didn't even say I'm against immigration. I didn't mention any race at all. My partner's an immigrant. Like it's just crazy. All I want is people to have houses, and is that racist? Like, it boggles my mind.
Yeah, apparently it is. I mean, it is sort of indicative of the manner in which these things are debated now. It's almost a cancel culture of sorts. But from where I sit, the government's job is to look after its citizens. When we pay taxes in order for our leaders to look after their own. And to me, this sort of smacks of, it's almost like a parent going next door to the neighbour's house and saying, well, have you kids been to Dreamworld? Would you want to come? And, you look back in your own house and your own kids struggling to put food on the table. I mean, what is it you think is happening where governments are bringing people in from other countries? And we don't, I mean, we don't have any issue with the people themselves. If I was coming to Australia from another country, like my grandparents did actually, I'd be very grateful and very happy, and, nothing against them personally. But isn't it the government's responsibility to look after their citizens first and foremost and put Australians first?
I certainly think so. I have some thoughts about that. I do wonder if people in the government are sort of captured by lobby groups and I guess vested interests. Or it might be that they just live in a bubble. Maybe they don't realize. Maybe they don't see the regular working people day to day. And although that is hard to believe, I mean, even around here, there's plenty of wealthy people, and there's also caravans parked in the street with people living in them. So it's hard to believe that they don't know that the problem exists. But for whatever reason, they do seem to be ignoring it.
Well, I've spent 6 years trapped in the bubble that is Canberra, and I can tell you the level of disconnect between the political class and the real world is very real. I mean, I say it all the time. It's like it's not, they call that a bubble in politics. It's not really a bubble. It's like a concrete reinforced bunker in that building. And I think very often there is no consideration given to what's happening in the world because the political class feel as though they're looked after. I mean, we see time and time and time again that being played out in front of our eyes. But you went to particularly long lengths to try and make the point. You set up a caravan out the front of the Prime Minister's house, which I think is rented at the moment, according to the news reports. And you had a banner up there with your website, which you've created, which is costoflivingcasualties.com.au. We'll put that link up in the description and in the social media posts we put to there. But you've been trying to highlight the issue perhaps better than anyone in the country has. That was one of them. That happened a few weeks after the Q&A scenario. How did that play out, and how popular were you at home when you decided you were going to camp out for a while?
Yeah, so I had to cancel. My family, we were going to go visit my mum out Dubbo way, and I had to spend the money on the caravan instead, and we went and did that. But I felt it was such an important thing at such an important time. Literally millions of people are suffering really quite horribly. Some of the stories that I've already got on that website, it gives me nightmares. So I just felt obligated to at least try and draw some attention to it.
How long were you there? How long were you camped out?
Just there a few weeks, I think, a bit less than a few weeks. I spoke to the neighbours there. They're all lovely. They're all supportive. Gave a little gift to the people who are living in Albo's house, and they all agree. It's hard for me to understand how people could really disagree that people need homes. So the vast majority of people are supportive. But I really was surprised at the disinterest from my local member, and I tried to reach out to most of the Labor Party, and just didn't get any responses. But
I know you got a bit of media attention. I think you went on 2GB with Ben Fordham, and he talked about it. But I mean, was there any other media attention? I mean, it seems like a good opportunity to highlight the issue.
Yeah, I think it definitely got the message across. We did 6 News, we did a current affair, we did Newsmax. I did a bunch of interviews, and they sent their news crews up, and I think we got the message out there. I'd say again, millions and millions of people would have seen and known what was going on. I just was a bit disappointed in the response from the politicians, because it was really them I was trying to reach out to.
And have you had any contact from the government at all? I mean, on any level, be it government departments or elected MPs or senators? Has anyone reached out?
No, nothing yet. Not since I camped out at Albo's. Like I said, I've sent a bunch of emails and made phone calls to officers and things, but nothing yet. But I'd just really like to just talk to them about it. And like you said, if it's some kind of a concrete bunker in Canberra, I'd like to sort of bring them back down to earth and take them around to the local. People are camping out in the bush, and old ladies living in cars, and it's horrible. It's just really horrible. And this is even in a fairly well-to-do area too. This is the cheaper areas and deeper in the bush. There's just so many people, and they're really suffering.
Somebody said on one of those clips, somebody tried to suggest that it was, this was a complex issue, which it's really not actually a complex issue at all, is it actually? I mean, if you bring less people into the country, then you solve the problem immediately. Now, it may be that you have other things that, don't get solved. It may be that you need, nurses and whatever, but I would have thought the priority number one was making sure Australians had places to live. In your mind, yes, there are, I'm sure a lot of factors, but, is it really that complex an issue from where you sit?
No, not at all. And I feel like a lot of those people who say we need nurses and we need doctors, and if we didn't have millions of immigrants coming in, perhaps we wouldn't need as many doctors and nurses. I feel like it might actually take a lot of pressure off a lot of industries. And look, who's it going to hurt if you delay a visa for a foreign student? Like, tell them to come back next year. Like, is it really going to hurt them? Is there nowhere else in the world they can study? I mean, I don't think it seems like a no-brainer. And, it's one thing we can do that will immediately help. Of course, there's other things we can talk about. I'd love to talk about tax reform and maybe those universities could build accommodation for the foreign students that, they're making millions of dollars off. There's lots of things we could talk about, but managing immigration is just a no-brainer. It's the straight up easiest thing we can do. We did it, COVID, we shut the borders in a matter of days. So, we don't even need to go that hard. We just need to manage it a bit better.
And some of the responses that you got on the night, I think, of the Q&A night were to the effect that, we have to weigh up all the factors. And I think you made the point quite rightly on the spot, which I thought was very good, that you're the government, you can do whatever you like. Wouldn't, stopping the flow of people who are, therefore providing competition for Australians of somewhere to live, wouldn't that be the overarching priority in the circumstances? So that really is the point, isn't it? I mean, the government has the power to do whatever it needs to. It's just a question of where you put the priorities. And, from where I sit, if the competing priorities are things like revenue from students coming in or nurses, that need to be replaced or whatever the industry sector is, then wouldn't it be the case that those are problems that are fixed some other way? I mean, maybe we're training too many lawyers at universities, or there must be a whole range of other solutions that flow, that don't require people just to be brought in to compete with Aussies for resources. Surely.
Absolutely, and I think the government's trying to. They're trying to train people. They seem to be doing, TAFE things, which it seems like a good idea. And maybe they should focus more on that stuff instead of trying to solve all the problems by bringing people in. Just mathematically, if you think about it, I think that's about 2% of the people coming in are builders. So, that's 1 in 50. So how long is that going to take? That one builder going to take to build houses for the other 49? And it's probably the same with nurses and doctors and stuff as well, because that one or two nurses has to look after many patients. So I'm not sure that it's even making a significant difference bringing them in, considering how many other people they're also bringing in. And what's more, it doesn't seem unreasonable that they should prioritize, say, the doctors and nurses over the foreign students, for example. Because if we need something, then why aren't we focusing on that? We could certainly, even temporarily, we could certainly make adjustments that would help. And really, anything would help right now, because it's we're going to be in a world of pain in the next coming few years if we don't do something. The immigration is not going down. I think their estimate's 1.8 million more people coming in the next few years. That's staggering. That's a staggering number of people, considering we've already got an absolute crisis in our hands. I feel like we need to do something right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and it's not just hitting this with a blunt instrument of just more people, more people, more people. It's got to be more nuanced than that. It requires, in my view, a whole range of reforms that are needed in order to fix some of these problems. I mean, one of the issues is, even if the regulatory framework was sufficient to allow homes to be built quickly, that is, people weren't bound up with local regulations and environmental red tape and green tape and whatever it was. The costs associated with that are so high now as a result of high energy prices and building material costs. I mean, it is inconceivable that we could build our way out of this. They need, I think, something like 60,000 new dwellings per quarter to even keep up. That's just not going to happen. And the building industry itself, as you well know, is not humming along beautifully at the moment because of those cost of living issues as well. So it's a really a solution. The only solution really is to turn off the tap, I think, and it doesn't sound like we're going to get that. From your point of view, your personal point of view, though, things have just, I'm sure people will be interested. You're sort of stabilised a little bit in terms of your own personal scenario with the rental.
Yeah, my landlord's actually been really great. I've been here for 5 years. And I've negotiated with him a much smaller increase that I can manage. So I'm okay now. And I'm just really continuing this on because of the millions and millions of other people that are facing this situation. I feel obligated because so many don't have a great landlord. And people with kids, elderly, vulnerable people, disabled people, even healthy young men, it's not healthy to live in the bush. It's not healthy to live in a tent. And what's more, that's going to be putting a burden on the health system as well. So all those people are in poverty. That's putting a burden on the welfare system. It's putting a burden on the health system. It's just damaging the whole economy in a myriad of ways. And I mean, I don't expect them to do something about it right now, but we really need to. And I really hope that they'll get the message and I hope they'll listen.
Yeah. And this website, which is costoflivingcasualties.com.au, tell me about that. When did you come up with the idea for that, and what are you hoping to achieve?
Well, it's really simple. It's just a place where people can go and tell their stories. And then my plan is to pass that on when I've got a large number, to pass it on to politicians. And I was thinking about maybe charities as well who might be collecting data, but just to try and get it out there, that the situation that people are in. Some of these stories are harrowing. They'll make you cry. They're just devastating. And I feel like if people would tell their stories and we could get them out to the politicians, then maybe it'll break their hearts as well. Maybe they'll start to really understand what people are going through. It really is the stuff of nightmares. I'm even hearing about people having their children taken away, and it boggles my mind. Working families, they have one small, something happens to their health, or they lose their job, through no fault of their own, or maybe it's just a massive rent increase, and there's just no way you can compete. And then these people are thrust into a lifestyle that's it's not appropriate for, one of the richest, I think the second richest country in the world per capita, that, elderly ladies should be living in cars. It just boggles my mind. And yeah, I really hope we can get it.
That we would be, as lucky as we are with the natural resources that we've got, and we're not seeking to use them for a range of reasons, and that we've allowed the system to do this to Australians of all, makes and models, of all races and genders, and whatever the issue is. There is people are Australians, and we shouldn't have Australians, as you say, living in the bush and living in tents. It's unfathomable, and that the government, to the extent that it's listening, it needs to listen more about this, because these are real human stories. In terms of the website itself, so you're looking to just gather as many stories as you can, and so you just ask people if they have their stories to go on there, to share them, and then the website will reflect those stories, and then at some point you're hoping to sort of get those, to the politicians and let them hear them. I've read a few of them. You're absolutely right. I mean, they're hard to read, actually. It's hard to believe that in this time, this era, we live in a country where this is happening. It just shouldn't be happening, and there's no reason for it to be happening. Do you hold out any hope, though, that given the lack of success you had from getting a response from the government, that you'll get any response from this?
I don't know. I actually feel pretty optimistic that if I could get these stories out, I'm not sure what the process is going to be to actually get people to read them, but I feel like this stuff really breaks your heart. The stuff I've published is the very, very tamest of tame. What I haven't published is wild, and it's just devastating. And I feel like if people read that, if they have a heart at all, then they'll care and they'll want to do something about it. Because my situation, as difficult as it was, it pales in comparison to some of the situations these other people are in. So yeah, I desperately want to get it out there. I want it to be known. I want people to just tell their stories. It's just a text box. They can just type it in. It's just a short, put in a few sentences about what happens to you, what's happened to you. And there's some radio buttons, so just some buttons you can click if you think this thing or that thing would help you. And then we can put that to the government. This person has suffered this horrible situation, and this is what they think would help. And then, I'm hoping that'll get it out there, and I'm hoping, perhaps some charitable organisations might also pick up on it, and they can collect the data and again, go to the government with the surveys and what they have. That's how we know these people are in poverty, because someone did the survey. So I'm hoping to add to that and just raise awareness for the issue. And if these people have a heart at all, and I guess we'll find out soon enough, but if they do, I think they will act.
Well, look, I've got to say, you've the last couple of months, you've really put on a clinic on how to get a topic front and centre on a national conversation. You've done so with your own, issues bubbling away in the background as well, and you've really raised this issue, I think, probably more than anybody has, through your own hard work. And the website costoflivingcasualties.com.au is just another example of that. So, I really have to congratulate you for doing that, and thank you for doing it. And hopefully we can get the word out there and keep pushing this around, because I agree. I think this is as important an issue as there is facing Australia at the moment. So well done. And thanks for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for the chat.